In this video, we're going to be taking a look at the process that we're going to use to fill this design with rhinestones. Now, this is an actual piece of artwork that was sent to me by Angela Garcia, which is an Easy Stone customer, and she says, Kevin, how do I go about filling this design with rhinestones? I've tried to use the island fill function in Easy Stone. I've tried to use the grid fill function in Easy Stone, and I just don't get the results that I'm expecting. And the simple answer is that anytime that we're dealing with quote unquote a complicated logo, you will find that almost without question, any push button solution for a fill is just not going to give us the results that we're looking for. Now, if we look at this logo itself, it's not complicated. In fact, it doesn't get much easier than this in terms of logos. But because of the arcs, because of the intersecting paths, where the T and the C are all intersecting, a push button solution to fill this design with rhinestones just isn't going to give us the results that we would expect, isn't going to look nice. So what we need to do then is we need to take a different approach. And we have the tools in Easy Stone to make this a fairly simple process, but you just have to kind of think a little bit differently than that push button. I want a button. I mean, we all want a button that we can push and poof, the design's done, right? But it just doesn't exist because of the complicated nature. Now, let me show you the finished design. Okay, so here is the finished design. Now you can see it looks really good, right? But there is no push button solution to get us here, although the process that I'm going to take is going to be very, very straightforward to you. Isn't going to require a lot of Corel Draw skill, isn't going to require a lot of knowledge on the Easy Stone side. These are just very, very basic techniques, but we break it down piece by piece for you, so you'll be able to reproduce this fairly quickly and easily. Alright, so first of all, we have to take a sneak peek at the artwork itself. Now, a lot of times, having a piece of vector artwork is beneficial to us, sometimes not so much. Okay, but one thing I noticed right away when I opened this up was that there are these control handles. See all these little black dots all the way around the artwork? There's control handles way down here, but the artwork stops way up here. Well, why is that? And the reason for that is there's a little speck of something right there. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to ungroup the design. I'm going to go to the View menu and make sure I'm in Enhanced, which I am. And this little speck, we can't hardly even see it, but it's there. So first of all, I'm going to get rid of that. And then when I select my whole design, you can see that now my control handles are not sticking way down here. They're right at the end of the artwork like I expected them to be. So that takes care of that. Now what I'd like to do is I'd like to fill this design with a color rather than just have an outline. So I'm going to select it and just pick on a colored square down here. And notice it doesn't fill. And the reason it doesn't fill is because this is not a closed object. So, and I know that because I inspected the artwork previously. And right down here you can see where that is not quite touching. Now there's actually a function in Corel Draw. If I switch over here to my Shape Edit tool, right here, this little button right here is Close Curve. So it will do its best to guess how to close this curve. So let's just click the button and see what happens. Boom. Done. See how easy that was? And so that little gap that it detected right there, it just closed that up for us automatically. Now sometimes it does a great job, which in this case it did. Sometimes not so great. It connects in an area where we wouldn't want it to connect. Now we also have this secondary object, and what we're going to do is just select both and click Combine, and that just punches right through. Okay, now that really wasn't imperative to our work, but we'll go ahead and clean it up because that was one of Angela's questions. Was I tried to use the island fill function and it wasn't giving me the results I wanted because it was giving me a warning that said that the object was not closed. And so I just wanted to point that out, that's why, because there's a tiny little gap there. Now, that said, we don't want to use the island fill function at all. In fact, we don't want to use any push button solution for a fill because it's just not going to give us the results that we would want anyhow. So, but we can create this fairly easily. So let me show you how it's done. Go over here to the Stone tab, and we already have a stone size selected. We also have a spacing selected. So we're going to click Drop Stone, and that just drops us a single rhinestone right onto our worksheet here. I'm then going to kind of reposition this rhinestone down here, where the T and the C kind of come together as one, right down here at the corner. Now what I want to do is I want to offset this rhinestone to the right. So I'm going to come to my Stone Fill tab, and let's just choose like 8 offsets and hit the right button, and it just offsets it to the right. Now I did one too many, so we'll go ahead and delete that one. And then what we're going to do is just kind of center this up. Just use our arrow keys, nudge it over just a little bit. Alright, now what I need to do is take this whole row, and I'm going to offset the whole kit and caboodle here like 40 times vertically. See that there? So just offset a whole bunch of times vertically. Delete any ones that are overlapping our artwork. Now what I want to do is take a whole swath of stones here, and I want to offset those to the left. So I'm going to just offset them to the left and to the left again. Again, deleting any overlapping stones. Pretty simple stuff right so far, right? So then what we need to do is we need to figure out what we're going to do for the lower part of our T. So for that, we're going to go up here and choose our 2-point line tool. And all we're going to do is click, hold our Shift key down, and drag out a straight line. That's it. Under the View menu, we have the option to snap objects is turned on. So I'm going to go ahead and switch to my Pick tool, pick up that line that we just created, and drag it and snap it right to the center point of that rhinestone at the bottom. Then I'm going to use my Stone Fill tab, and I'm going to offset this line. So you can see how I just click on, keep hitting the bottom, and offset that line as many times as I need it to get to the bottom of my letter T. Now what we're going to do is we're going to do our 2-point line tool again, but this time I'm going to draw a vertical line. Hold my Shift key down to constrain to a perfect vertical line, grab my Pick tool, pick it up and move it, and we're going to, there it is. Right at the center, but left to right center instead of top to bottom center of that rhinestone. Now, this is our trim object. So I'm going to select that vertical line we just created, come over here to our editing tab and click on Mark Trim Object. Then the lines that we want to trim, where these lines extend beyond the left of our trim line, we want to trim those back. So we click Trim Objects, and I then can select those line segments to the left, and they are now gone. So now we don't need this horizontal line any longer, nor do we need the vertical line any longer. Okay? Now we can actually use our T as the cut object. So we'll hit Mark Cut Trim Object, and then we're going to select our lines again, and then we're going to enter in a very small value. So I'm just going to go ahead and let's just do 0.1 of a millimeter. So when I trim these objects back, you can see what happens. All those lines are trimmed back just exactly the way we would expect them to be. Now this bottom line here, we're actually going to just come in here to our Shape Edit tool and just delete that little segment there. Okay? So now all those lines have been trimmed back perfectly. Now we can stone those lines. So I'll go back to our Stone tab, choose Add Stones, and that takes care of those. So you see, pretty straightforward to do. Now what we need to do is we need to kind of take all of this and just mirror it over here to the right. So what we're going to do though is we're going to select all these stones, just like so, and then we're going to select one extra one. Hold our Shift key down and select one more. That stone right there is actually going to be what we used as our, what I call kind of an anchor stone. See that stone just hanging out there, dangling out there in space? Well, the reason for that is we're going to mirror this, and then from the center of this stone, we're going to drop it right on top of the center of this stone here. So then we get perfect alignment. See that? Now we do have a stone on top of a stone right there, so we can go ahead and delete that extra stone if we want to. Alright, we're going to deal with overlapping stones later once we get into this a little bit more. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and finish our T. So we're going to grab a swath of stones and offset those to the bottom, and one more time. And then of course we would have to delete any overlaps, just like so. Okay, so we're getting there, right? We have our letter T completed, and that wasn't terribly complicated. Fairly easy to do. And now we have our letter C. Now we can choose either side to start from, but I'm going to start here on this side, on the right hand side. And what I can see by looking at this, pretty much the top part of our letter C is identical to the bottom. So whatever we do up here, we can duplicate, mirror, and move it down here. So this is how I approach it. What I look at is this letter C. We have this stone right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my 3-point curve tool. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start from the center of this stone and drag out a line. And there is that line, just kind of follows that curve. And the reason I use this process is because it's an easy process. It doesn't take a great deal of CorelDRAW skill, and it will yield me the results that I want, which is perfect. So once I have that initial line drawn, I'm going to go ahead and choose 5 island fills. Because I'm using a non-closed object, I can't offset to quote-unquote the inside because there is no inside. So I have to hold my shift key down and click island fill, and what that will do is will offset to the outside. Okay? So I'm just going to pick up one of these pieces to illustrate something to you. So let me illustrate this. So what it did, imagine that line, the original line I drawn right in the middle, it offset, 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 offset. It gets gradually bigger, 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 bigger to the outside, and then it gets gradually smaller, smaller, smaller to the inside. But this is what it gives us. Right now it's one single object. Over here on the editing tab, we have this break at node function. And basically what that does is at every sharp corner, it will break it. So right now we're telling it between 35 and 140 break. I'm going to actually lower that a little bit. Let's do like 100. So any angle between 35 and 100, it breaks. All right? Once you get to working with logos and get to using EasyStone more and more and more, you'll know what angles to use. But for this example, we're going to use 100, and we'll click on break at nodes. And what happened now is each piece is now, you can see, separate. So I can delete my end caps, and then I can delete, those other lines. Each one is separate. So going back to what we just created here, let's do that same process. Let's select those objects. They're right here on top. Let's break at nodes, and then let's begin deleting. If I just start selecting curves, you can see I don't want to delete that one. You can see which one is highlighted. And the next one, that's an end cap. So let's go ahead and delete that. See there? And it's just, sometimes that's to the inside. That's an end cap. And the way we could do too is we can come in here and we can delete them from here. Sometimes that's easier. Sometimes it's not easier. It just depends. Sometimes it's easier deleting things from the object manager. Right here where things get a little bit messy, because we have all kinds of things happening there, it might be easier to delete from the object manager rather than trying to delete, select them from inside. But we could just go through. There's an end cap, that's a line, that's an end cap. So it's just a matter of, I just want to show you a couple of different techniques. So we've deleted all the end caps. When we deleted all the extra curves to the outside, we left all the curves to the inside that we want to use. I'm now going to group all these together. Group those together. Now what I need to do is I need to draw out a rectangle, and because what we need to do is we need to trim back all these lines. See how they are extending beyond our stones? We need to trim them back. So if I go into my shaping docker, and we aren't going to leave the source original, so we have our rectangle selected, and I'm going to trim these lines. You can see all those lines were trimmed back. Very, very easy, right? So now we're going to do the same thing to the bottom here, where I'm going to draw out a rectangle. Now there is a slight angle there. So just to show you how to do that, we're going to click on our rectangle again, go ahead and give it a slight angle, and then we're going to pick up our rectangle and snap it. So same thing as before, select our rectangle, trim our lines, and those were trimmed back. So now, when I go back to my object manager, we can stone those lines. So we have these, there's a group of 6, let's ungroup them and stone them. So we're going to change our color to crystal, come to our stone tab and choose add stones. Whew! A lot of work, but it's a very methodical process. It's fairly easy in terms of CorelDRAW knowledge, fairly easy in terms of easy stone knowledge, and the fact of the matter is the result is a perfect result, and obviously that's what we want. So we're going to go ahead and select all of those 6 lines because we're going to make a duplicate of those. So just duplicate them and then mirror those vertically, and then we can grab that and position it for the bottom here. And we're just going to select that stone, and you can see that takes care of that. Alright, so now we're going to select the entire design, and we're going to click Break Stones, and then we're going to select the entire design, go over to our selections and choose Select Define Paths, and that will allow us to pick up all the paths that we created that we don't no longer need for our design. Go ahead and get rid of that. Alright, now where these stones overlap, we're just going to go ahead and delete those manually. Just select one by one and delete those manually. Same thing down here. Delete all these. Okay. Now these stones, where they come in across the T, what we're going to do here is we're going to select a swath of those stones and we're going to recolor them. So that's where we go to the Stone tab, rename and fill, and now those are all crystal stones. So now we need to do the back side of our letter T. And that basically is a very similar process to the front side in that we're going to start off with our 3-point curve tool. Start here at the bottom, draw out a curve, try to copy the original as closely as we can, and then we're going to do the next part of it. So we just kind of hover over it, and there is the next part. So now that we have that curve done, then we're going to do the same thing to the top. So come up here. Okay, we'll just kind of position it like that. And again, we're just trying to follow the original line. Perfect. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to take that top segment and the bottom segment, those 2 segments together, and combine them. So we'll go ahead and choose Combine. And right here at the tip, there's 2 nodes. We're going to choose this Join 2 node function. So now that is one line. You can see that there. And we're going to do exactly the same thing as we did previously. We know that we need to offset this 5 times. And we're going to choose, but this time we're going to remember, because it's not a closed object, we need to hold down the Shift key, Island Fill. You can see it, offset, 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 right? And then we're going to go back over here to Editing tab, Break at Nodes, and then we're going to delete all these line segments to the outside. Because we don't need those, we need the inside ones, right? So we'll go ahead and do that. And again, we have all these end caps. So we want to go through and we want to delete all of the end caps. So let's go ahead and do that. And you could choose to do that through the Object Manager, or we can do that directly here inside our artwork. And I think for me, I'm going to do it right here inside the artwork. So we just have to, when we're clicking, we want to make sure we click on those lines and not on a stone. So then we just took care of all the end caps. Now we do need to trim these lines back. So let's select all of them here in the Object Manager. Right click and choose Group. And then we're going to grab a rectangle And we're going to just drag this out. I snap to the center point of a rhinestone. And then we're going to come back over here to our shaping docker. And we're going to trim our lines. So you can see all those lines were trimmed back perfectly, top and bottom. Beautiful. So now we're ready to stone those. So back over here, we can go back to our object manager. Okay, and we have those group of 12 objects, so we're going to ungroup those and stone them. So go back to our stone tab and choose add stones. And up here where we have, and actually then we can just go ahead and take all of these and we're going to break those stones. So break them apart, and then where they have the overlaps here, we're going to go ahead and just manually delete those overlaps. Just quicker. Looks like we didn't get that last one broken apart, so let's go ahead and do that. Break stones, and we can delete the overlap there. Alright, so then down here, what we need to do is we need to fill in this gap right here. And there's a variety of ways to do this, but let me show you how I'm going to do it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just delete a couple of stones here. I'm going to delete 3, and we're right here. We're going to delete 3 stones here too. Then I'm going to draw a 3-point curve from this stone to this one, and just kind of eyeball that curve. Something like that. And we're going to go ahead and click Add Stone. So you can see now we have that curvature the way we want it. And this stone is overlapping, so we'll go ahead and get rid of it. And now what we can do is we can just fill in this gap. And this is, is what it is. So we are going to try and fit SS10 stones. See, that's really tight. So what we might do is we might switch that out to be an SS6 size. So that's why we have this resize replace function. Now that's an SS6 stone, and we could probably sneak one in here too. Maybe not. So maybe what we'll do is we'll back that one off and we'll reposition this one. So you might have a little bit of a gap there, and that just might be how it has to be, just because that's just the way it is. You can only fit in what you can fit in. All right, and then up here we're going to kind of try to do the same thing. Let's fill in the gap as best we can. That's pretty tight, so we're going to move it out to here. Plenty of space there, so we have a little bit of a gap there, but that's just the nature of the beast, right? And then we're going to try and fit an SS10 in here, which I think we can do. It's a little bit tight, but we can get it in there, so that's fine. And then we can just shuffle these around a little bit. And then, then it's just a matter of you have to decide how you're best going to fit this. And that's why these push button fill solutions just don't work very well, because we're often faced with this problem of filling in this little gap. How best can we fill that in? And it's very hard for a computer program to make that determination for us. So we're going to go ahead and grab this stone and just bring it straight out. And looks like we could make a duplicate. See, so there's not quite enough room for a third stone. So maybe what we'll do is we'll go ahead and put 2 stones like that, and then we'll grab an SS6 stone. And maybe we can drop one SS6 stone in there, like so. And just kind of shuffle these stones around a little bit. There we go. Just give us enough spacing there. And then we can go ahead and continue to fill this in. So maybe I'll grab an SS6 stone for here. And we'll grab an SS10 stone. Maybe it'll be better if we just use 2 SS6s here as well. Okay, and then as long as we're using SS6s anyhow, let's just go ahead and continue to use SS6 here. I don't know if there's enough room for a third one, but we're going to try it. So let's go ahead and let's just delete these. They might just get in our way. I think if we reposition things around a little bit, we can probably get it done. And then we can just keep going. So if I want to just go ahead, maybe I'll just fill in the whole rest of this area, I'll just use SX6 stones. And we can, we can cheat these stones a little bit, move them around, whatever you want to do to fit this in as best we can. Now this top part wasn't completely symmetrical to the bottom, so it won't look exactly the same at top and bottom, but it'll be close. Here there's probably only room for 2 stones, so we just fit in 2 stones. And then, our next row here, we're probably only going to get 2 in as well. If we tuck one down here and we tuck this one over here, and we could tuck that in, there we go. So we've pretty well filled in that area, but we had to do that by hand to fit, fit all those stones in as best we could. All right, so we have a few SS6 stones in there to best utilize it. Now we could, we could do it all in SS10, probably too, but I just want to show you generically how that works. So what we're going to do now is we're going to delete our vector artwork that we started with. So we'll go ahead and delete that vector artwork. We're going to select everything. We're going to break stones. Select everything. Go to Selections tab. Select Define Paths and delete those. Just hit the delete key. And then all of our stones have a black outline around them, so we're going to select the whole lot. Right click. Gets rid of all of our outlines. And then select the whole lot one more time. Come over here to our Miscellaneous tab and add our weed box. And there is the finished design. You can kind of see that now. Now, I just want to point out a couple other things. You saw us kind of manually placing stones. We didn't have to stop there. Remember when we created that first row, that first arc? Sometimes when you look at something a second time, you say, maybe there's a better way to handle this. So maybe what I would do is, rather than fill in this design the way I did, maybe what I could do is just keep going. So let me show you what I mean. So I'm going to just delete some of these stones back. And this is where you can eat up some time, because the first time you do something, you say, well, you know what, I don't really like that, and then you try something else. So what we're going to do here, we're just deleting some of these stones away, and we're going to just fill it back in. So let's grab our 3-point arc tool, and let's draw an arc between these 2 stones. Like so. Let's go ahead and stone it. So go back to our Stone tab and choose Add Stones. Now, you can see what I did. I actually added SS6 stones, which I didn't want to do. So let me just go back and change back to my SS10 size, and we'll add stones. And so now you can see. Now down here, you can see down here that the stones are a little close together. And that's the beauty of working with stones on a path, is we can make adjustments. Let's go to wireframe mode, and we can grab this path and we can just tweak it. So see that there? And now, and also, I can add stones. So if I want to add or subtract stones, I can do that. Make those stones a little bit tighter, which I think I like that a little bit better. And you can see right here, it's a little bit tight right there. So let's just click on that path, and let's modify our path just a little bit, so we can not have it quite so tight right there at the beginning. So see, I just tightened that up, loosened that up a little bit. Now I tighten it up here, but I'll double click and I'll grab a control point, and we can pull that around and just follow those stones around. So you see there? And then we could just keep going as much as we want, or as little as we want. So I can just come in here and grab this SS10 stone, and maybe I'll just go ahead and fill that in there with an SS10 now. So you can play with this design a little bit, and you just try these different techniques to get whatever it is you want to get. But you can get there, and just play with it a little bit. And like I said, we could keep going row by row, or we could fill it in. If you look at what I did previously, you can see what I did. I just did the first row, and then I filled it in. And you know what? Once you get it on a shirt, these little tiny gaps that exist, that's part of the nature of rhinestones. It's not going to make a huge difference once it's on a shirt. So I hope that gives you at least an idea of how to tackle this particular logo and utilize some of these techniques for other logos that you may come across. And while it's not easy push button solution, you can get the result you want, and it'll be a great finished project when you're done. Thanks for watching.